Hi students. So today we'll be discussing about renal physiology, pathophysiology, and medical nutrition therapeutic management for kidney patients. Basically, we'll be discussing about glomerulonephritis, nephrotic syndrome, acute and chronic renal failure patients. And also, we'll be discussing about the etiology, clinical and metabolic manifestation, and dietary modification, uh, like macro elements, micronutrients, everything we'll be discussing in detail. So get the ball rolling. So what is renal disease basically? If we do our introductions about the kidney, so each kidney is composed of small functional units called nephron. We know kidney is basically two bean-shaped organs. Each kidney is about the size of a fist. Your kidneys filter extra water and waste out of your blood and make urine. Kidney disease means your kidneys are damaged and can't filter blood the way they should. So you are the greater risk for the kidney disease if you have diabetes or high blood pressure. If you experience kidney failure, treatments include kidney transplant or dialysis. Other kidney problems include acute kidney injury, kidney cysts, kidney stones, and kidney infections. So basically, in this chapter, we'll be discussing about the physiology and also the pathophysiology of kidney. So this is the anatomy and physiology of a kidney, where we can see uh, a kidney basically with lot of nephrons. So what is nephrons basically? Nephron is the structural and functional units of the kidney. With aging, the number of nephrons keep declining and degenerating. Each nephron consists of glomerulus, which is a tuft of capillaries invaginated into an epithelial sac, Bowman's capsule, from which arises a tubule. The different sections of this tubule are the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, or you can say Henle's loop, and distal convoluted tubule, which in turn open into the collecting duct. Branches of renal artery give rise to afferent arterioles, which divided to form glomerular capillaries. These in turn unite to form the efferent arterioles, which supply blood to the renal tubule. The important function of the nephron is to maintain the normal composition and volume of the blood. Basically, the nephron filters most constituents except red blood cells and protein from entering the blood. Major nutrient reabsorption takes place in the proximal tubule. The remaining filtrate passes into the loop of Henle. Water is further absorbed in the collecting tubule. So students, we have to understand what is the functions of nephron, because nephron is the only with the functional unit of the kidney. So please look at this slide. This is the actual anatomy and physiology of a kidney. Already I have discussed about nephrons. So again, it has been seen that different part of the nephron is the most important part of each kidney. Basically, it's taking blood, metabolize nutrients, and help pass out waste products from the filter blood. Renal corpuscles, after blood enters a nephron, it goes into the renal corpuscle. It's called a Malpighian body. The renal corpuscle contains two additional structures. Glomerulus is the cluster of capillaries that absorb protein from the blood traveling through the renal corpuscle. Bowman's capsule, the remaining fluid called the capsular urine, passes through the Bowman's capsule into the renal tubule. Renal tubules are a series of tubes that begins after the Bowman's capsule and end at the collecting duct. Each tubule has several parts. Proximal convolutional tubule. This section absorb water, sodium, and glucose back into the blood. Loop of Henle. This section further absorb potassium, chloride, and sodium into the blood. By the time fluid reaches the end of tubule, it's diluted and filled with urea. Urea is byproduct of protein metabolism that's released in urine. What is renal cortex? The renal cortex is the outer part of the kidney. It contains the glomerulus and convolutional tubule. The renal cortex is surrounded on its outer edges by the renal capsule, a layer of fatty tissue. Together, the renal cortex and capsule house protect the inner structure of the kidney. Renal medulla. The renal medulla is the smooth inner tissue of the kidney. It contains the loop of Henle as well as the renal pyramids. What are the renal pyramids? Renal pyramids are the small structures that contain strings of nephrons and tubules. What is the collecting duct? There is a collecting duct at the end of each nephron in the renal medulla. This is where filtered fluid exits the nephron. What is renal pelvis? The renal pelvis is a funnel-shaped space in the innermost part of the kidney. It functions as a pathway of the fluid on its way to the bladder. The first part of the renal pelvis contains the calyces. These are small cup-shaped spaces that collect fluid before it moves into the bladder. This is also where extra fluid and the waste become urine. There is hilum, there is renal artery, there is renal vein, and also the ureter. We know ureter is a tube of a muscle that pushes urine into the bladder where it collects and exits the body. Now we'll come to the functions of the kidney. So basically the functions of the kidney, there are three important functions. The three important functions, one is the excretion, one is the endocrine function, and one is the metabolic function. What is excretion? Basically through the urea, uric acid, creatinine, acid base, electrolyte like sodium, potassium, chloride, and also water. So these are the basically the excretion part. What are the endocrine functions basically? The endocrine function, synthesis of the active vitamin D3, erythropoietin for the RBC formation, renin and angiotensin for the blood pressure regulation. Students, you have to understand there is a very good relationship between the blood pressure and the renal function. That's why renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system or mechanism is there. That will come later on. So that's why it's very important for the blood pressure regulation and the kidney function. So this is the endocrine function. And what are the metabolic function? Metabolic functions are nitrogen metabolism and the gluconeogenesis, especially during starvation. We all know about the protein sparing action, gluconeogenesis, and also the nitrogen metabolism. So this is a very important part where kidneys doing functioning this all. So glucose, amino acid, bicarbonate, sodium, water, phosphate, chloride, magnesium, potassium, and all are basically the reabsorbed products. Okay. So maintenance pH is also their function. The function are basically the osmolality regulation. Osmolality is a measure of the body's electrolyte water balance or the ratio between the fluid and the minerals in the body. Dehydration is a primary cause of the electrolyte imbalance. If osmolality rises in the blood plasma, the hypothalamus in the brain responds by passing a message to the pituitary gland. This in turn releasing the ADH, I mean antidiuretic hormone. In response to ADH, the kidney makes a number of changes, including increasing urine concentration, increasing water reabsorption, reopening portions of the collecting duct that water cannot normally enter, allowing water back into the body, retaining urea in the medulla of the kidney, rather than excreting it as it draws in the water. That's why there are a lot of, the adverse events, a lot of symptoms like edema, the ascites. There are a lot of symptoms will happen during this kind of condition. That's why fluid restrictions is one of a major part that will come later on during that I think the nutrition. And also the blood pressure, what I'm saying, the blood pressure is also one of the causes. The kidneys regulate blood pressure when necessary, but they're responsible for the slower adjustment. They adjust long-term pressure in the arteries by causing changes in the fluid outside of the cells. The medical term of this fluid is the extracellular fluid. These fluid changes occur after the release of a vasoconstrictor called angiotensin II. Vasoconstrictors are hormones that cause blood vessels to narrow. Blood vessels to narrow is called the vasoconstriction. One is dilate, is called the vasodilation. They work with other functions to increase the kidney's absorption of sodium chloride or salt. This effectively increases the size of the extracellular fluid compartment and raises blood pressure. Anything that alters blood pressure can damage the kidneys over time, including excessive alcohol consumption, smoking, and obesity. Secretions of active compounds. The kidneys release a number of important compounds, including erythropoietin, that controls erythropoiesis of the production of red blood cells. Renin, these cells manage the expansion of arteries and the volume of blood plasma, lymph, and interstitial fluid, and also calcitriol. This is hormonally active metabolite of vitamin D. It increases both the amount of calcium that is intestine can absorb and the reabsorption of the phosphate in the kidney. That's why all the nutrients are important, like sodium, potassium, phosphorus, calcium. All things are very important. Now this is the pathophysiology of renal disease. So what would be the pathophysiology of the renal disease? That is very important, because pathophysiology is one of a cause and one of a reason where we can understand that the kidney problem and kidney disease. You can see there are a lot of roots. There are a lot of roots about the pathophysiological roots. Okay, one is the root of the clinical manifestation during the blood pressure. That is one of a root. Another root, there is also the glomulofiltration rate. That is also a root. Another root is also infection. There are a lot of infection. If we come to the etiology, there may be some, the bacterial infection. There are, this kind of problem happens also in the 3 to 10 years of young adults also. Okay, there are some streptococcal infection also. There are systemic lupus erythematosus, SLE is there, cancers is there. There's a lot of other problems. That is the etiology. But if we talk about the pathophysiology, there we can see, number one, there's the antibody response to the bacteria, viruses, chemicals, antibiotics is called the streptococcal infection. From there, excess antigen antibody complex, AAC, in circulation. From there, antigen antibody complex trapped in glomeruli. From there, antigen antibody complex binds components of complement. From there, activated complement provides chemical factors that attract leukocytes. From there, the lysosomal enzymes of leukocytes causes injury to the glomeruli. From there, lumps of antigen antibody complex deposit between the epithelial cell of the nephron capsule and the basement membrane of the glomeruli. From there, lesions develop, fibrinogen leaks into Bowman's capsule. From there, scar tissue is formed and obstruct the circulation to the glomeruli. From there, fatty degeneration, necrosis, and destruction. Necrosis means death. Necrosis and destruction of nephron. From there, reduction in the number of functioning nephron. From there, nephritis, and from there also kidney failure. So this is very important. And in this picture, you can clearly see this GFR, glomerular filtration rate is there. Number one stage 1 means 90. Okay, 90 and below 90. Stage 2 means 60 to 90. Stage 3 means 45 to 60. Stage 3A. And stage 3B means 30 to 44. Stage 4 means 15 to 29. Stage 5 means end stage renal disease, ESRD, that is below 50. So more GFR means good, less GFR below 15 is typically end stage renal disease. Okay, so this is all about the pathophysiology, where the leakage of glomerulus, leakage of any kind of infection in nephron due to this. And also there's some drug nutrient interaction related there, because we know there are certain drugs, okay, like angio tensin converting enzyme, mineralocorticoids, antagonist, receptor antagonist. So these are the drugs where side effects can also occur. And also there are other drugs like any kind of analgesic, like non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, that is also harmful. So there are a lot of etiological charting, lot of various of causes that can do the kidney problem, chronic kidney. So this is an ideal picture for that. So what is chronic kidney disease? Chronic kidney disease is a long-standing progressive deterioration of renal function. Symptoms develop slowly, and advanced stages include anorexia, nausea, vomiting, stomatitis, cramps, water retention, undernutrition, peripheral neuropathies, these all of them. So basically, from a quote of National Health of Nutrition Examination Survey, NHANE's 2018, the prevalence of CKD, stages 1 through 5, in the US adult generation population is estimated at 14.8%. What is the etiology? Chronic kidney disease may result from any cause of renal dysfunction of sufficient magnitude. Okay, the most common cause in the US in order to prevalence are the diabetic nephropathy. If the uncontrolled diabetes can cause to the CKD, we call the diabetes comorbidities. Okay, hypertensive nephrosterosis, various primary and secondary glomerular nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, metabolic syndrome, which is hypertension and type 2 diabetes are present, is a large and growing cause of the lot of causes of the renal damage. In case of pathophysiology, I've discussed also, is initially described as a diminished renal reserve or renal insufficiency, which may progress to renal failure, is called the ESRD. Initially as renal tissue losses function, there are a few noticeable abnormalities because the remaining tissue increases its performance, renal function adaptation. Decreased renal function interferes with the kidney's ability to maintain fluid and electrolyte homeostasis. What I've told you before also, is 15 ml per min per 1.7 centimeter square. This is the GFR rate. So in case of GFR rate, we say this is the end stage renal. What are the symptoms of the renal failure? What are the symptoms? What you can see the renal failure. Symptoms are hematuria, presence of RBC in the urine, proteinuria, albuminuria. This kind of symptoms also happen. Renal blood flow and the glomerular filtration rate are reduced as much 50% or more at the damaged glomerular capillaries allow plasma protein in the blood cells to pass through into the Bowman's capsule. Blood pressure raises, malaise, headache, swelling of face, persistent nausea, confusion, shortness of breath. SOB, we have discussed a lot of shortness of breath during our cardiovascular congenital heart diseases slide. So this slide also, shortness of breath is very important. Mild acidosis. Okay, so this is also important. And in case of nephrotic syndrome, there are the symptoms like edema, proteinuria also. There are symptoms. Okay, and due to the serum protein losses, tissue protein broken down, resulting in the general malnutrition. So these are several diseases, and also there I told you several times that edema, swelling of your legs, ankles, feet from retention of fluid caused by the failure of the kidney to eliminate water. So this is the edema is the one kind of symptoms of kidney failure, renal failure. So what are the early signs of the kidney failure? Symptoms of the early stage kidney disease may be difficult to pinpoint. They're often subtle and hard to identify. If you experience early signs of kidney disease, decreased urine output, fluid retention that leads to swelling in limbs, and shortness of breath. This is very important. Decreased urine output. There is basically it may be oliguria, maybe anuria, fluid retention that leads to swelling in limbs, shortness of causes of kidney failure. I told before also, kidney failure can be the result of several conditions of causes. People who are most at risk usually have one or more of the following causes that I told also before: heart attack, heart disease, heart failure, scarring of the liver or liver failure, severe burn, allergic reaction, sepsis, high blood pressure, anti-inflammatory medications, NSAIDs, all are like painkillers. There are a lot of tendency to people have painkiller very rapidly and for a long term. The long-term effect will give very adverse events for the kidney. This is one of the causes. So this is one of the causes for the kidney failure. Other causes: urine elimination problem. When body can't eliminate urine, toxins build up and overload the kidneys. Some cancers can block also the urine passageway. Prostate, most common type in men. Some people have now, prostatomegaly. This is a very common. Colon, cervical, bladder. Other conditions can interfere urination and possibly to kidney failure, like kidney stones. We know the renal calculi, enlarged prostate, blood clots within your urinary tract, damage to your nerves and control your bladder. So these are the other causes, other clinical causes that also can lead to chronic renal failure or kidney disease. Now we'll come to the test. What are the tests? We'll be discussing about the clinical biochemistry, blood test also, and also the imaging. So let's come to the blood test first. Number one is the urea and the creatinine. So these are the basically diagnostic tests we're talking about. So urea, creatinine, basically they tend to increase the blood due to the inadequate excretion in the impaired kidney function. Basically, it happens due to the it's a longer term marker of renal function. It mainly arises from the muscle to levels may be elevated after consumption of meat. So meat is so you have to understand meat is a very creatinine rich food and also have a good amount of methionine and sulfur. So I also discussed about the GFR, glomerular filtration rate. So it's measured by the creatinine clearance test and measure of the efficiency with the kidneys remove a substance from the blood. Normal creatinine clearance is adults is about 1255 ml per minute, which can be reduced to 30 ml per minute or less when kidneys fail. So GFR is previously assessed by taking a 24-hour urine sample, but it's now estimated EGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate, from one or two equations. That basically the Cockcroft-Gault equation uses serum creatinine weight isn't calculated is there also with the MDRD formula takes in the account age, sex, creatinine and ethnicity to determine the EGFR. Free online calculators are available for the both equation, but health professionals must check with the local pathology laboratory to find out which they should use. Because also the EGFR can do by the pathology, but some people have the calculator, they have calculated the glomerular filtration rate. Urine protein is very important. A few different tests may be used to screen for the protein in the urine, urine albumin and albumin creatinine ratio, which we used to call ACR. These detect small amounts of albumin in the urine. The American Diabetes Association recommends ACR as the preferred test for screening for albumin in the urine microalbuminuria. Urinalysis, this is a routine test that can detect protein in the urine as well as red blood cells and white blood cells, what I told you also, hematuria. These are not normally found in the urine and if present may indicate the kidney disease. Urine total protein or urine protein to creatinine ratio, UPS by CR, detects not just albumin but all types of proteins that may be present in the urine. How the tests are performed? Kidney function tests usually require a 24-hour urine sample and the blood test. Now we'll come to electrolytes. Because in case of renal function test, I have already discussed, but in also electrolytes, they're simultaneously important for with the renal function test. What are electrolyte panels? Electrolytes are electrically charged minerals that help control the amount of fluid and the balance of acids and bases in our body. They help control muscle and nerve activity, heart rhythm, and other important functions. Electrolyte panel, there is sodium. Sodium is very important electrolyte. Potassium is there, chloride is there, bicarbonate is there. The level increase and decrease depending on the kidney disorder. In sodium, we can say the amount of the fluid in the body, nerves, muscles work properly. Chloride helps control the amount of the fluid in the body, helps maintain healthy blood volume and the blood pressure. Potassium helps heart muscles work properly. Bicarbonate maintain the acid and base balance. It also plays an important role in moving carbon dioxide to the bloodstream. Abnormal levels of these electrolytes can be sign of a serious health problem like kidney disease, high blood pressure, and also a life-threatening irregularity in heart rhythm. It's called the arrhythmia. It's also abnormal electrolyte levels can denote that. Okay. Now we're talking about the kidney imaging test. So what are the imaging tests? This is not the blood test. This is basically the imaging test. Ultrasound is one of the imaging tests. What is the ultrasound? The test uses sound waves to get a picture of the kidney. It may be used to look of abnormalities in size or position of the kidneys or for obstructions such as stones or tumors. During your practical examination or internship, you can see the the report of the USG ultrasonography report where can they define the diameter, the measurement, the kidney, and the impression. Okay, by a radiologist. CT scan. This imaging technique uses X-rays to picture in the kidneys. It may also be used to look for structural abnormalities and the presence of obstruction. This test may require the use of the intravenous contrast dye, which can be concern of for those kidney disease. Now we'll talk about our special paper part, that is the medical nutrition therapy. We'll discuss about that. Okay, so before starting this medical nutrition therapy, I will just briefly want to discuss about the common renal diseases. So what are the common renal diseases? Acute and chronic nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, acute renal failure, renal transplantation, renal calculi, and also the dialysis. So in this slide, we'll be not discussing about the dialysis, renal transplantation, and renal calculi. That will be discussed in another slide. In this slide, talking about the normal kidney disease with medications and the diet. So in the dietetics part, we'll come to the dietetics part. We can see that the general principles or guidelines we have to follow. So what are the guidelines we have to follow? That reduce the excretory work of the kidneys while maintaining a near normal fluid acid-base electrolyte balance, maintain satisfactory nutritional status, prevent progression of renal damage and development of the uremia, accumulation of the nitrogenous waste products in the blood. To meet the three basic objectives: protein, electrolyte, especially sodium and potassium, and the fluid. But we'll be discussing about each and every nutrient that is important for, because in nutrients is a very major role in the cases for the management of the medical nutrition therapy for the renal disease. So what are the first things? The first thing first, that's energy, that's calorie. So calorie is basically for children is 80 kilocalorie per kg body weight and 10% for the infection suggested. Sufficient calories is given without increasing the protein intake by means of sugar, honey, glucose, sagu, fats and oils and the starchy food by bringing carbohydrates. Liberally, protein catabolism and starvation ketosis are reduced. Basically, you may also need to adjust how many calories you eat based on your weight goal, because weight is very important, because BMI in this case is very important. Some people will need to limit the calories they eat, others may need to have some more calories. So your doctor dietitians can help you to figure out how many calories you should have each day. Work with your dietitians and make a meal plan. Definitely the dietitian should let you know the calorie intake on daily basis, because it's not a printed kind of diet chart. It should be case specific, it should be gender specific, work specific, and also their BMI specific. So that is very important when we're talking about the calorie. Now we'll come to the protein. So protein is a major role. If the blood urine nitrogen is elevated and oliguria is present, then dietary protein must be restricted. Usually, the diet contains 0.5 gram of protein per kg ideal body weight for older children and 1.5 gram per kg per day for the younger children. In intake, proteins is reduced to a minimum by excluding the protein-rich food. So, in that cases, in the dietary management, we will always try to maintain a ideal good protein. And also proper consumption of protein is tricky for the chronic kidney disease because protein is an essential part. It's not that we always try to restrict as much as we can protein. No, their negative nitrogen balance, catabolism will occur. So protein is essential for the tissue maintenance and the other bodily roles. So it is important to eat the recommended amount for the specific stage of disease. Diet should be on the high biological value of protein to reduce into load, nitrogen load, a mixture of essential amino acid is recommended. So in that cases in hospital, you get a chart and get a guideline that low protein one is a 40 gram per ideal kg body weight. Definitely biochemistry clinical report suggested low protein 20 gram per ideal kg body weight. That should be accordingly you can make a diet plan for the CKD patient. So protein is a major role and very important role for managing these things. Now talking about the carbohydrates. So if we talk about the carbohydrate, basically a minimum of 100 gram per day is essential to minimize tissue protein breakdown. It's not like low carb, no carb, such a fancy diet. Carbohydrates are the easiest kind of energy for your body to use. So healthy source of carbohydrates include fruits and vegetables. Unhealthy source like sugar, honey, hard candies, aerated drinks, sugary drinks, no. Should be 300 to 400 gram per day to avoid endogenous protein catabolism, gluconeogenesis, and subsequently uremia. We shouldn't allow gluconeogenesis. You know what is gluconeogenesis? That apart from any other sources, when the amino acid from the protein can break down to glucose, it's called the gluconeogenesis. High intake due to its protein sparing action. So we shouldn't allow protein sparing action. That's why high intake is important, and we have to follow the rule, the optimum protein rule. According to, you have to make a diet plan for the patient who are on CKD, right? Next, we'll talk about the fat. So fat is also very essential because in cases of fat, your energy and helps you to some vitamins in your food, but too much fat can lead to weight gain and heart disease. Try to limit fat in your meal plan. So choose the healthy fat. I always told about the monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat. Okay, that is very healthy, but shouldn't go for the saturated fat. Okay, if we talk about the good fat, unsaturated fat, that is olive oil, peanut oil, corn oil, and unsaturated fat can help reduce cholesterol. If you need to gain weight, try to eat more unsaturated fat. If you need to lose weight, limit the unsaturated fat also. But saturated fat, you shouldn't do butter, ghee, lard, shortening, meats, okay, creams, all that kind of a trans fat like cookies, margarine. These things should be limited from your diet. So this kind of fat should be limited from your diet, and also limit to 30% energy from the fat, less than 300 mg of cholesterol, especially if the patient has the hyperlipoproteinemia and also hypercholesteremia and dyslipidemia. So limit this in your meal plan. Choose healthier unsaturated fat instead trimming the fat from the meat and removing the skin. Basically, we can try to incorporate much more of lean meat rather than organ meat. Okay, we shouldn't go for organ meat. We'll always avoid trans fat. This kind of fat makes your bad cholesterol, LDL, low density lipoprotein cholesterol higher and your good cholesterol lower. When this happens, you are more likely to get heart disease, which can cause the kidney damage. Now we'll talk about the sodium. We already covered about the macronutrients. We're talking about the micronutrients. Sodium is salt, basically is a mineral found in almost all foods. Too much sodium can make you thirsty, which can lead to swelling and raise your blood pressure. This can damage your kidneys more and make your heart work harder. So sodium loss through urine is measured and replaced. So diluted hyponatremia occurs due to water retention. Water restriction then salt administration is indicated. Therefore, sodium restriction is also judged based on sodium loss in the urine. So do not add salt. Choose fresh or frozen vegetables instead of canned and preserved vegetables. If you do use canned vegetable, drain and rinse them to remove extra salt before cooking or eating them. 500 mg to 2 gram per day, like 2000 mg. Additionally, sodium in case of weight loss and decreasing urine volume, and restriction of sodium in case of edema and hypertension, high blood pressure. Monitor and diuretics, because there are a lot of diuretics we'll be discussing about the diuretics. In that cases, we always monitor, we always discuss with your doctor regarding which diuretics, which diuretic medication is going on. But you should always discuss about the medicine with your doctor, but diet part, always you talk to a dietitian. Now talking about the potassium. Potassium is a mineral found in almost all food. Your body needs some potassium to make your muscles work, but too much potassium can be dangerous. When your kidneys are not working well, your potassium level may be too high or too low. Having too much or too little potassium can cause muscle cramps, problems with the way your heart beats, and muscle weakness. If hyperkalemia means when the potassium level elevates, okay, then we restrict the 1000 to 2000 mg, 25 to 50 MEQ. On improvement, increase to 60 70 MEQ. Intake must be kept at 1500 mg per day, that is 3 MEQ per day. And in case of significant losses, potassium supplement should be given. Potassium supplements, a lot of medications is there, and also there's some Potchlor medication is there also, and their medication with the fruit juices sometimes doctors can suggest. Calcium and phosphorus. Calcium supplementations 1 to 2 gram per day, and phosphate to be restricted 800 to 1200 mg per day. Phosphorus is a mineral found in almost all foods. It works with calcium and vitamin D to keep your bones healthy. Healthy kidneys keep the right amount of phosphorus in your body. When your kidneys are not working well, phosphorus can build up in your blood. Too much phosphorus in your blood can lead to weak bones that break easily. So many people with kidney disease to limit the phosphorus intake. So in case of dietary management, in many patients, we are always try to decrease the dietary phosphorus level. Always decrease the phosphorus, because phosphorus is a mineral that found in a lot of foods. Now we're talking about the fluid. It's a very major part. Fluid part is a very major part, because total fluid intake is a very important part, where you can see the any kind of liquid item the patient is consuming is considered total fluid intake. It's not like the water, but any kind of fluid he or she is consuming is considered as a fluid. So you need to water to live, but when you have kidney disease, you may not need as much. This is because damaged kidneys do not get rid of extra fluid as well as they should. Too much fluid in your body can be dangerous. It can cause high blood pressure, swelling, and heart failure. Extra fluid can also build up around your lungs and make it hard to breathe. So if you fluid retention in your lungs, like pulmonary edema proliferation can occur, so it will be life-threatening. If you do not limit fluid, measure your fluid and drink some small cups to help you keep track. Sometimes you can measure with some calibrated bottle or any kind of shaker. Limit sodium to help cut down on, because if you take a lot of sodium, water retention will occur. At times you may still feel thirsty. To help quench your thirst, you might try to chew gum. In diabetic also sugar-free chew gum. Rinse your mouth, suck on a piece of ice, mints or hard candy. So this is a way. Intake is dependent on urine output and water balance. This is very important. You have to monitor. You have to monitor the urine output and water balance. In case of a hospital, when you go for the internship, you can see their chart is there, like urine output and water balance. You have to talk to the sister and discuss about the fluid level. If reduced GFR and oliguria, restrict to amount equal to urine volume plus 500 ml. So now we will talking about the renin, angiotensin, and aldosterone system. This is very useful, the RAS pathway and the RAS system. How it's occurred? From the liver, it secretes angiotensinogen. From the angiotensinogen, it will comes to, with the help of renin. Renin converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. It's called angiotensin 1. From angiotensin 1, angiotensin converting enzyme ACE. With the help of ACE comes from lungs, will help to angiotensin 2. From the angiotensin 2, it will goes to the angiotensin stimulates aldosterone secretion in the adrenal glands. Kidney angiotensin stimulates sodium and the fluid retention in the kidneys. Angiotensin stimulates muscle hypertrophy and fibrosis in the heart. Angiotensin stimulates sympathetic outflow in the brain. Angiotensin stimulates vasoconstriction in blood vessel. Vasoconstriction means constricted blood. Vasoconstricted is very, if blood pressure rises up. That's why there are medications. There are medications like angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. In that case, as you can see, their angiotensin converting inhibitors block the ACE. That's why angiotensin 2 will not occur. So vasoconstriction will not occur. Again, another medicine is called angiotensin 2 receptor blocker. That is also will not form these things and to reduce the vasoconstriction. So these all are the basically the blood pressure lowering medication. Antihypertensive drugs, ACE inhibitors, angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, all are the blood pressure lowering medication. In case of ACE inhibitors, the example are ramipril, enalapril, captopril. In case of angiotensin 2 receptor blocker, we can say the sartan, all the sartan like telmisartan, valsartan, all are the sartan group are the examples of the angiotensin 2 receptor blocker. So these are major functions of the kidneys and the heart. Okay, so you have to understand the RAS pathway is very important to understand the arterial pressure in the kidney, decrease sodium in the blood, increase sympathetic tone, and sodium and fluid retention. So these all parts are depends on this RAS system or RAS pathway. So now we'll come to the drug nutrient interaction. We're talking about basically the hypertensive drug and also the kidney drug. So in ACE inhibitors drugs like enalapril, captopril, so ACE inhibitors are drugs that widen the blood vessels to improve your blood flow if you are taking this drug. Okay, definitely, because ACE inhibitors, ACE helps to this conversion and do the vasoconstriction. But if you inhibit the system, and just going back to the previous slide, if they inhibit the system to angiotensin converting enzyme ACE2 angiotensin receptor, there is no chances of the vasoconstriction. So the dilations will occur. So it will be helpful. So these drugs will be there, like enalapril, captopril, salt substitute, but they have potassium. And ACE inhibitors make your body retain potassium. So over the counter, no steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like NSAIDs like acetaminophen, aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen. These may cause your body to retain sodium and water and make ACE inhibitors not work as well. So in case of ACE inhibitors is working, we always try to, see the blood report, the potassium report, and the sodium report. That is very important. That's why screening is very important. Also the MSc book has written the screening is there. Screening is very important. Okay, so this is the way you have to check the doctor's prescription. Which are the drugs is good? Which are the drugs the patient is taking? Okay, because there are a lot of it's not like only kidney disease alone. It may be hypertension, type 2 diabetes mellitus, uncontrolled diabetes, and sickle. So you have to see all the things simultaneously, monitor all the things. Okay. Apart from that, there is a drug is called the mineralocorticoid, the corticosteroids antagonist receptors, spironolactone, naldactone. That is also important. So in that case, it also have to restrict the dietary potassium as much as we can the potassium. Okay, potassium restriction should be there. Now we're talking about the diuretic. That is basically the water pill. Very simple. It's called the water tablets or the water pill because they can cause you to pass more urine than usual. They work on the kidneys by increasing the amount of salt and water that comes out through the urine. Diuretics often prescribed for the heart failure patient and sometimes for the patient with the high blood pressure. You can see there are some combination drugs is there, like telmisartan with the CT, like clotrimazole, furosemide, diuretics. Okay, there are a lot of things are there. So this is the way we have to understand which drug is good, because there are a lot of nowadays there are combination of drugs out there. Okay, like with CT, something with D. You have to understand. Among patients taking digoxin, lanoxin, low levels of potassium caused by the concurrent digoxin and diuretic. Okay, thiazide group of drugs, but thiazide, okay, and the loop diuretics may cause the weakness, cramps, and the irregular heartbeat. In case of lithium, like lithobid, lithonate, lithotabs, given concurrently with diuretics, thiazide, and the loop diuretics may induce lithium toxicity due to the decreased renal elimination of lithium. Lithium levels should be monitored to ensure safety. Potassium sparing diuretics given with the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, for example, like indomethacin, Inducon, have been associated with the severely elevated levels of the potassium, like hypertension. Severe rate of the like bradycardia, it is important to monitor potassium blood levels and to have the electrocardiogram should be performed. Diuretics are often prescribed with other medications for the high blood pressure and the heart disease. These may increase the effects of this medication. Potentiality causes the electrolyte abnormalities such as reduced levels of the potassium. Not only diuretics, ACE inhibitors, and the ARBs, there are also the modern like ARNI, angiotensin receptor or neprilysin inhibitor that basically fit for the heart failure patient. This is also the adverse effect, side effect basically. Sorry, not the adverse event, is the hyperkalemia. So you have to check the potassium. So electrolytes and the renal function test simultaneously they have to monitor. That is very important. You have to monitor. So this is all about the nutrition management part. That is, we have to take care of it also. Not only these things, because we are talking about lot of restriction, but if it is needed, then sometimes the dietitian can add the multivitamin supplement, especially vitamin D3 in cases, because there are, if we restrict a lot of things, so maybe there are, problems and inadequacy of vitamin D3 can occur. So we have to give some vitamin D3 supplementation. So basically multivitamin can also recommend it. So student, this is all about the renal physiology, pathophysiology, and the dietary management. We'll be discussing about renal transplantation, kidney transplant, and dialysis, some other. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you.